The Maharaja front did not give on his own. He has seen several write-ups all over. And the resident of the British told him also that there is something to be done in this matter, which we are not very happy with the situation. Slowly, the Congress policy was not to get involved in all the princely states. According to the Congress, even today the BJP, one important thing, deciding factor, that all the kings in the princely states were all part of the Indian freedom movement, whether they were part of the British Empire or not, but they are part of they are not against, they are not enemies, and therefore there was never a Congress movement or a Congress party was formed in those princely states, and that became the advantage for the Congress socialists to work in those places. And later, most of the Congress socialists became communists also. That is how you will find in some of the states, in the princely state, there is a greater presence of the leftists than the Congress, because the Congress foolishness that they will not take such issues in the princely state. Their only aim was to get freedom from the British, and that was the plus point for the leftists. Now, when this issue went further and further, one important issue took place was Congress was only concentrating on political movement and not on social issues. They thought after independence, everything will be guaranteed. Whether it is a case of workers, whether it's a case of Dalits, whether it's a case of OBCs, when we come to power, everything will be all right. That seems to be their attitude. And there was a reluctance in taking a definite stand on social issues. So the Vaikam became a starting point to look into the political movements of India, which also started working on the social sphere. And that is how you will find when Dr. Ambedkar in 1920 started the Mahat tank issue. He also made several write-ups on that. I think most of you should read his Mahat speech, which is one of the very important landmark in the turning point. That we go to take water from a common place. Water is available other places also. Why the common place? The question was, why not? When you have access to public areas, whether it's a tank, burial ground, or a public road, or a temple, where is the question of that you are permitting us and our having access to these places? Now the Mahat tank movement slowly grew, and finally at the end of the movement, you will find he also burned a copy of Manusmriti. The Manusmriti, which is always considered as the rule book of the Varnashrama, which we are even continued to keep the same rule book in many areas. And therefore, he said the burning is only a starting point. We could have kept quiet also, but then I want to shock the consciences of the Hindus that whether they follow the correct position of rule, where communities are divided into caste, and there are Savarnas and there are Varnas. There are 4 castes within the Savarna, and there are people who are casteless, they become the Avarna. What is their caste? We do not know. They are Avarnas. Now, suppose there is a child born between 2 independent castes. Now, what is the child? What is the caste of the child? And Manu says Sandala. The word Sandala comes from Manu, where if there is no caste identity, he is a Sandala, which means casteless person is also a person who is to be kept away from the caste system. Now, this is something which is very peculiar to our Indian subcontinent, and because many sociologists were unable to find out how certain unwritten rules handed down from generation to generation, from people to people, continue to hold so much sway without there being any, I won't say sanction. There are sanctions. You may be living in the city, you may be studying in IIT, you may not be thinking of sanction, but there are sanctions. And the sanction is also not now time immemorial. In fact, Ambedkar, in his Annihilation of Caste, he quotes one important event. Now, everybody blames Rama. Rama was supposed to have killed Sambhuga, who attempted to learn Vedas. And he has crossed his caste rule by learning the Vedas, which is not meant for him. He comes from a Sudra community. And therefore, he has to be punished. and Sambuga's head was removed. Now, many people who read Ramayana will always think, for example, Ramayana has been translated to several languages. In Tamil, it is a Kamba Ramayana. Now, Kamba Ramayana doesn't have a story of Kambuga. It's there in Valmiki. Now, Ambedkar, having mastered several languages, including Sanskrit, he has read this story of Sambuga, and then he writes. In fact, it shows the maturity level. He says, why blame Rama? Rama is a Kshatriya. He is a ruler of Ayodhya. If there is somebody violates the caste dharma, there are punishments given under the Manu. And the king has to impose that punishment. He has to execute that punishment. And therefore, as a Kshatriya king, as a person who tried to establish the caste justice, he killed Sambuga. And therefore, what is to be blamed is the Varnashrama and not Rama. Rama is only as a king he executes, because that is his job to do that. The Kshatriya has to establish the caste justice, and therefore he has killed him. And therefore the fault with not Rama. Could Rama shown some linear punishment? Today we talk about death penalty being abolished, even though he killed somebody else. We are now talking about a reformatory system of punishment. We are not retributory. Therefore, one question comes, Rama being such a person, even Muslims call him as a Maryada Purusha Rama in UP, they also respect him as a person who deserves respect. Now, could he have shown some lesser punishment to Sambuga? Now, Dr. Ambedkar writes, it's not possible, because there is no such discretion. Manu is very clear that if you violate your caste, that's the end of the matter. And there will be sanctions will be there. And Kshatriya king, he will put the sanction. And this is most important. Now this story, he took pains to explain this story to reinforce that Manu Dharma or Manu Smriti is so powerful that nobody can even violate. Now this has been handed over from generation to generation. And therefore, today, even if you want to, you wish, you can't just wish it away. And it continues. And what is shocking today is, what is the sanction behind all this? This is most important. Suppose I violate my caste dharma. Who can punish me? It depends on the place where you are there. It depends on the place where you choose to live. It's not as if you can escape anywhere. And then how does it everybody reverentially obey? What about education? What about the new idea of that we bring into the new younger generation? Now, this is something which always worries me, because today, starting from the Vaikom centenary, I want to give you some 3 examples. Let me start with only temple entry. An altar of God, anybody can go and worship. That is how we have been told. That is what most of the scriptures tell you. But then, entering into a temple is different from allowing you to participate in the very many rituals that they undertake in those temples. Most of you may not know, near Devakote, there's a place called Kandadevi temple. The deity is called Swarnamutiswarar. In 1930, for the first time, after the first roundtable conference, when Ambedkar told the first RTC, he said that we need separate electorate, separate constituencies for Dalits. There is no other way. And Gandhi, having built the Congress and having built the unity of India, unity of Indians, he didn't want to give in to that new demand. He tried to persuade. But Baba Sahib did not agree to this. He said, no, the only way where the Dalits can redeem themselves is to have a power to themselves. There is no question of getting into a separate constituency. It's not possible. And then Gandhi in Yerawada jail went on a fast. The fast continues, and the tension starts building. Mahatma Gandhi's influence, the tension was building up. And there are many pressure on Baba Sahib Ambedkar, because if anything happened to Gandhi, you will be blamed. And Gandhi, as usual, took that as a blackmail point. And after a few days have passed, there is no other way. Gandhi did not give up the fast, and Baba Sahib agreed. So the Gandhi-Irwin, the Pune Declaration, first time gave up a separate electorate for the Dalit. And Dalits were given separate quota for streets. That's how the agreement was there. Now, when this happened, first question Dr. Ambedkar asked Gandhi was, all right, you are now talking about political mission. What about your social mission? Does not the Congress party has anything to do with society or social change? Do you think if the British goes, things will be different? The same Hindus with the same power, the same structure. Where is the justice for Dalit? So Gandhi moved by that. He said, no, Congress will do something. So he started the Harijan Sevak Samiti. At that time, the Dalits were known as Harijan because Gandhi gave that name. They are children of Vishnu. And nobody agreed with the name. Even today, that name sounds very jarring. But the Harijan Sevak Samiti wanted to collect money, and Gandhi made a visit to Tamil Nadu. During his Tamil Nadu visit, at that time it was the Madras Presidency, so in the Madras area, he wanted to go in 1930s. The person who was piloting him was Dr. T.S.S. Rajan, who's from Srirangam. He comes from a Vaishnavite family and very poor family who lives off the prasad from the temple. They live in a mutt in the Andavan Swami mutt in Srirangam. His father is no more. He wanted to do medicine. And he told his mother. Mother said nothing doing. No medicine for people coming from the Brahmin. That to Orthodox family, no medicine. But he will not get seat also because the competitive place. So what he did was, there was a Burma quota in the medical college. Burma was also one of the part of the British, and therefore they wanted to provide some seats to Burma. And one of the conditions for Burma quota, you will have to serve 5 years in Burma as a doctor. So he signed that without telling the mother and started attending the college. He got the seat. He went to Burma. He was in Rangoon for some time. Then he wanted to take a postgraduate. And then, the Brahmins, the Shastra doesn't allow crossing the seas. And then once you cross seas, you will be excommunicated. So he went to London to pursue his MS and finished his MS, came back. His whole family was ostracized. And they were not given food from the temple, and he was ostracized. And he started working in the Harijan Sevak Samiti. He was piloting Gandhi. Gandhi did not go to 2 temples in Tamil Nadu at that time. One was Palni, second was Devakote. So when Gandhi's motorcade came to Palni, the first question he asked, will all the Dalits will be allowed in this temple? They said no. Then he said, I will not visit any place where the Dalits will not be allowed. Then finally, on this trip, they came to Karaikudi, went to Devakote, and in the Devakote, they were placed in the Chettiar's house. They called all the caste leaders of the Kandadevi temple. From morning 10 o'clock till evening 4 o'clock, the discussion went on. Gandhi asked them, why you are not? The demand of the Dalit was they must be allowed to pull the temple car. The temple car will have a big rope and everybody will pull. The idea of the temple car was the deity in a smaller form, Urchava Murti, will be placed in the temple car and go around the streets of the temple. The streets of the temple are also divided by communities, and the Dalits are always elsewhere, not in the village. There's always 2 villages. In fact, when Gandhi said India lives in villages, Baba Sahib asked him the question, which village are you talking about? In every place there are 2 villages. And now the Dalits wanted to pull the rope also. They were not allowed. And the Natars of Devakote refused to allow them. They refused to bhajan. So finally he said, I will not have your lunch. I will not visit your temple. I am leaving. Hoping that one day things will improve. And he left. This was in 1931. And in 1937, when Congress stood in the provincial election, the first government was formed by Rajaji. And T.S.S. Rajan, his original name is Soundar Rajan, he became the health minister of the Madras Presidency. Then all excommunication went off. He was welcomed with all the Purna Kumam in Srirangam because he is the health minister of the entire presidency. Now, so far as the other communities are concerned, your status, your wealth makes you equalize. The so-called boycott, the so-called excommunication never allowed. But the same thing is never for Dalit. You take the case of Devakotai, this Kandadevi temple. In 2005, I filed a case for Mr. Krishnasamy, who is the leader of the Pudhiya Tamilakam party. I filed a case in the High Court. The only demand was why we can't touch the rope. It's a huge temple car, and every community pulls that car. So the judge, you must have heard of the judge, Markandeya Gajju, is more often in the social media. He was the judge. He could not digest that the Dalits were not even allowed to touch the rope. He said, how can that happen? They are entitled to every ritual. They are entitled to participate every ritual that is possible. How they can stop? Now I'll pass orders. He passed orders that all of them should be allowed to touch and then pull the car, and they must be given equal honors in the temple. That is not our demand, but they're in the order. And then I thought, let it be the order. So the next day, what happened was, when the temple car was allowed to be pulled, a lot of people came, hoping that they'll be allowed to touch, but they were all stopped outside the village. And then the minister in charge of that area, he called two Dalits and told them to just bend and throw like this. And the photographers took all the pictures and then told them you can go. Then the car was pulled by others. Next day, papers said car was pulled, but Dalits were never allowed to touch. And the minister in charge was the leader of this gang. So next day, I mentioned to the judge that your order has been disobeyed. You pull up the district collector who's supposed to implement your order. He was not listening to me. The previous day was so bonhomie and trying to show every possible sympathy. The next day, he just showed stoic silence. That's a typical of Mr. Gajju. His grandfather was the minister in Nehru cabinet, Kailash Nath Gajju. That is how he was very important in Allahabad. And he just kept on staring at me but not giving an answer. So I asked him, yesterday evening you passed an order. Today it has been violated. What? Let me know the reason. He didn't give any reason. He only said, Mr. Chandru, social change will take slowly, step by step. Don't look for revolution. I said, touching a temple car rope, is it revolution for you? Constitution talks about untouchability being abolished in all forms. If there is a constitutional fundamental right, how you are preventing me from touching this rope? He refused to answer the question. And what really happened was, this happened in 2005. Today we are in 2025. The next year, the same order continues. Then what they did was, there is some repair in the temple car, therefore the temple car won't run. So it was not running for two years. Later they said, there are several trustees, everybody doesn't want to pool money for repair, that the government sanctioned funds. So government sanctioned fund for repairing. After 5 years, it was repaired, but then still not allowed. It took 2025 for people to go and participate in the temple festival. Leave alone entering into the temple, asking for any honors to be given, it's all gone. This has happened from 1930 till now. You can imagine, 95 years this country doesn't want people even to touch the temple rope. What is the reason? It's not the only place in Kandadevi. I can give you 101 example. I'll give you 2 examples. There's a place in South Madurai, place called Uttapuram. The caste people put a wall, 60 feet wall. The Dalits this side and the non-Dalits on the other side. Why is the wall? No, it is peaceful in both ways. It's very suits us. And then slowly the movement started. The anti-untouchability front started demanding this wall should be pulled down. And Mr. Prakash Karat was a Politburo General Secretary of CPM. He also issued a statement that if the wall is not pulled out, I myself will come. Then Mr. Karnanidhi was the Chief Minister. He said, no problem. Then the wall was demolished to some extent, and the people demolished the wall. Even today, I have a brick collected from that wall in my table. Many people used to ask me, why is they are keeping some brick? I said, this is a Uttapuram wall. Just like the German wall, people maintain mementos. A small concrete piece costs 3 euros. Whereas this wall, this brick is there on my table, so that I can explain why is this brick came. Now this was in 2010. I passed an order with the help of the police and the both communities. We arrived at a settlement. In my judgment, I said the wall divided, but the will united. Wall divided, the will united. That was my ending paragraph of my judgment. We thought things will come to something normal. That 2010. Now 15 years later, two days back, Madurai bench of the Madras High Court passed an order in the temple in the Uttavaram, the temple called Mutharaman Temple, that all communities can worship. Nobody can stop. So the entire police, revenue, everything was there in full form. But then the Dalits were allowed to come in and go out. Yesterday, when the Dalits want to offer Pongal to the deity, they were prevented. And the same revenue people stopped them. Now, you must ask the question. There is a court order. There is a law, is very clear. And then nobody wants this kind of a pushing them out. But still, there is some force which stops them from entering to the temple or receiving honor or offering honor. How do you explain this issue? It's not only there. For example, you take Melpadi in Viluppuram. That Draupadi Amman temple was locked for the last 1.5 years because there is a communal problem. Now, last week, the temple was open. And both sides brought, say, already everything ready. But only Dalit went inside. The others did not go. There was no common ownership, whether it's a deity or Amman or whatever it is. That I'll keep myself off. Now, after 1.5 years, when the temple is open, it's only the Dalit who went and came. Now, in the next day, when they went to offer Pongal, the cooked rice, they were prevented. Now the temple is locked again. Now, what is the kind of determination that makes people to say that you will not be allowed inside? This is one question which keeps haunting us all the time. Now, it is in this situation, one question comes, can you eradicate caste? Forget religion. Can you eradicate caste? This is one question. Annihilation of caste, which is a paper written by Dr. Ambedkar for a conference in Nepal, that is never published. For a long time, it was an unpublished document. And Baba Sahib papers were in Delhi. It was sent to Bombay and kept under the custody of the Bombay government. In 1988, a committee was formed to publish, and this book also has been published. Very small pamphlet. Now there are so many publications are there. How do you annihilate caste? What is the answer? I am not going to give you a lecture on that. In fact, my book, which is being sold, after my retirement, I decided to publish my judgment. Some of the judgments are not reported in law journals. It may be available on the website, but that's not very sure. Therefore, I decided to collect all the judgments relating to caste and religion. When I compiled some about 300 judgments under different topics, employment, burial ground, library, common facilities, and atrocities, so many issues are there. Right to land, Punjabi land, all that. I made all the subtopics. Finally, the question of title. What should be the title? So, after some time, I realized I could not have delivered all these judgments without reading Ambedkar. I may be thorough under the Protection of Civil Rights Act, under the SC/ST/PO Act, or Article 17, the various debates on 17, abolishing untouchable, all that may be there. How do you decide this issue? That's the first time I decided that I should read Ambedkar from cover to cover, read the entire selected works of Ambedkar. And I tell you frankly that every judgment which I wrote, where I quoted extensively Ambedkar, and it gave me the correct answer how to answer these questions. And therefore, I thought I will title the book as My Judgments in the Light of Ambedkar. And when I was interviewed in the Tandi TV by that Pandey, Rangaraj Pandey, he asked that question. You are a judge of the High Court. It's a constitutional court. How do you say that you have written a judgment in the light of Ambedkar? And somebody will write on Golwarkar also. I said, I don't care what others write. I will be unfaithful in my judgments relating to caste and religion if I have not read Ambedkar. I would not have found answers at all. I would not have seen the secret behind this kind of a discrimination and the social exclusion of communities and not inclusiveness. And that book, which I'm proud to present to you also, if you read more into Ambedkar, you will come to one conclusion, that today if you want to understand this religion, you want to understand the caste system, you got to read Ambedkar. I am not saying this for the first time. Recently, there was a public interest litigation. You know, in Tirunelveli, there is a central prison in Palangote. Now, Indian Express published a news that the prisoners are also separated on the basis of caste. There is a block for the Dalits, there is a block for the Devars, the color group, and there are non-color separate block. When this news came, everybody was shocked. As usual, a case was filed in the Madras High Court saying you cannot have a separate block for the prisoners. And now Madras High Court issued a notice, and the government response was, how does it matter? If they are put together, they are always in fight. And therefore, we are giving separate block. But otherwise, every facility of a prisoner is afforded to them. And what is the problem? The judge who heard the case was so innocent or so ignorant, dismissed the case by saying there is no discrimination. Now, this is something happened some 5 years back. Later, somebody filed a petition in Supreme Court that not only the Dalits are separated in jails, but they are also given jobs, menial jobs to them on the basis of the caste ranking. The jail rules themselves are so discriminatory that the job within the jail are given based on caste. Now, Justice Chandru, who heard the case, was able to get all the different rules of different prisoners all over India. And there is a judgment. You must be able to read the judgment. Sukanya Shanta was a Union of India. If you see in the website, you can read the judgment. One of the very best judgment, where for the first time, in 20 places, Dr. Ambedkar is quoted, including from his annihilation of caste. For the first time, I think, except for 2 exceptions, apart from me, the Supreme Court, for the first time, quotes Ambedkar in a judgment relating to prisoners where there is a caste discrimination. 2 things in the judgment you will find. Structurally, in the rule-making power, right from the British days, there has been caste discrimination. It is not just by practice. The practice also made the rule-making authorities to make rules, and the rules become a statutory rule. Now, first question Dhananjay Chandru asked, can these rules pass the muster of Article 7? What is the role of the court? He gives us answer by saying, in the face of these rules and in the light of the Article 17, one cannot keep quiet. The job of the court is to strike down every kind of discrimination. And we must start the Constitution talking about 14 equality before all law and 15 non-discrimination. These 2 articles are the such light where you can strike down any kind of a exclusion, and we should strive for an inclusive society. Now, in saying that, he also says that the Manusmriti, the Manu Code, has been buried for the first time by the Constitution of India. Therefore, when I talk about Ambedkar, when I talk about fondly Baba Sahib Ambedkar, the greatest contribution that he has contributed was the chairman of the drafting committee, drafting the Constitution and providing for a fundamental right. In that fundamental right, there is a trio, 14, 15, 16. Equality, non-discrimination in public life, and non-discrimination public employment. Now, these 3 articles goes together. Now, the greatest contribution that you can think of, a society which for the over 20 centuries has discriminated based on religion, based on caste, based on gender, based on area, or any one of them for that matter, even descent. The first time it says a state shall not discriminate. Therefore, he says the first foundation for a social justice emanates from Article 15. In fact, few years ago, there was a Hindi film known as Article 15. Everybody is wondering, Hindi film, but the name is Article 15. Somebody asked the director, why did you name it as a Article 15? There are 395 articles in the Constitution. He said, that is the heart and soul of the Constitution. And therefore, I helped us. And therefore, this judgment, the Suganya Shanta case, declares that Manu has been buried. And therefore, whose contribution? It is Baba Sahib Ambedkar contribution. And therefore, we should be proud. In the same judgment, talking about the Palangote jail, the Supreme Court took the High Court judge to task by saying, in America, at a point of time, they tried with the doctrine equal but separate, or separate but equal. The blacks are in one place and they'll be given all facilities. Whites are one place, they'll be given all different facilities. And therefore, that does not violate equality doctrine because everybody gets. This is how the Supreme Court says that the Madurai bench was committed a grave error. That people are all given every facility, they can be kept separately. This separate but equal document never agreed by our Constitution. Our Constitution does not follow the American Constitution. Even America, they don't follow the same equality clause because when the first independence declaration was made in 1773, they said all men are born equal. Now, the word all men are born equal is even today. At that time, blacks were not equal. In 1820, slavery was abolished. It's only in 1960 women got the franchise in America. But still the word is, it is perceived that all men are born equal. Now they were able to change by the society the words in the Constitution. So the word men is still there. But our Constitution, contrary to all that, it starts by saying all are equal before law and there shall be equal protection. And there shall be no discrimination based on sex, language, religion, descent, area, or any one of them. And therefore, the crown or the heart of the Indian Constitution is 15, and we should be proud that Ambedkar was behind this. Now, a man who's behind this constitutional debate and answered hundreds of questions. Many people used to say, in fact, one judge in Madras High Court, what is there in the new Constitution? 1935 Government of India Act, everything you have taken into this. I asked him the question, is there any fundamental right in the Government of India Act? Is there Article 32 where Supreme Court can do full and effective justice? There is no answer at all. People try to minimize the role played by Dr. Ambedkar. You should read. Suppose somebody wants to disprove. In what way you can disprove? Read the entire Constitutional Assembly debate. 5 volumes, running into 10,000 pages, hundreds of hours. 7,027 cuts were there in the House, out of which 5,000 were debated in the House. 3.5 years there were debates. In fact, in the school textbook, in the NCERT, they published one cartoon by Shankar, where Ambedkar will be sitting in a snail and Nehru with a whip will say, fast, 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 because people were tired. 2.5 years they were debating on the Constitution, not coming to a solution. People are getting tired after 47. Therefore, Nehru represents the impatient public opinion. And Ambedkar, being the chairman of the House, he was driving in a snail. Now, this cartoon in a newspaper is all right. But a school textbook, how does the teacher will explain this context? Will the teacher tell the children that 2.5 years they discuss, there were 7,000 cuts in the cut motions were there, 5,000 cut motions were discussed in the House, and hundreds of hours of debate, very patiently argued, and one of the beautiful documents that have been prepared. They will not say. But the purpose for which that has been introduced in the Constitution is to denigrate Ambedkar, as if he was responsible for all the debate. And how does the teacher will ever tell that it is not Ambedkar? This is only the situation that is being. This is something I'm saying. Today, everybody will praise Ambedkar. Today, they have a full page advertisements. We are having memorial. Even the London house where he stayed for a few months, that has been made into a memorial with millions of pounds. All right, you deify everybody, and finally the result is opposite. You try to have a cartoon to the school children of 15 years age to make them understand that Ambedkar was slow and Gandhi was the whip holder and Nehru was a whip holder. Now this is the pernicious, the wicked mind that works all the time to minimize. That is why one judge in Madras High Court says, what is there in the Constitution? let him ready for a debate. We'll say what is there in new. If in last 75 years in the subcontinent, no other state, no other country in the subcontinent were very happy with their constitutional setup. Pakistan went to martial law. Bangladesh, you know what's happening today. Nepal monarchy went off, and in Sri Lanka, you have a theocratic state and single-only policy. And this is how the entire subcontinent. Whereas for the last 75 years, with few amendments, maybe 103 amendment or whatever it is, good or bad, but we were able to today proudly stand as a republic, which is the starting line of constitution which says, we the people of India give ourselves. No other constitution in the world starts with the word, we the people of India give ourselves this constitution. Not somebody gives it to you. We are giving it ourselves to make this country into a democratic republic, a sovereign democratic republic. In 1956, the word socialism and the word secularism has been added. Now the preamble, Kerala government has now said the preamble page should be given to school children. When I went last week in Kannanur, I found that school children are having first page of the constitution. Why? They are not lawyers. But then the education of the importance of the constitution should start from the preamble. And therefore, we should appreciate that the Kerala government at least wants to make the children to realize this is most important, because we do not realize that constitution is not meant for the lawyers and courts. It is the only rule book under which we are ruled. If there is going to be any tinkering, if there is going to be any denial of the rights, it is for us to fight. At the time when the constitution was written, it was 21 years for the voting age. Today, it is 18. Everybody in this house are willing to vote. And if you are going to choose your leaders, better you also know what is the rule book. I remember a few years back in 2019, I think, there was a match, Australia and England match, the international cricket match. The match ended in a draw. And we don't like draw because we always have one winner and one vanquished should be there. And you know, England is always a foul game. They're very famous in making foul game. So they found a rule for playing a penalty over. The penalty over also resulted in a draw. Now what is to be done? Who is the winner? So all our youth were glued to the TV, burning the midnight oil. It was past midnight. And then the umpires went into a session. Finally, they came with a precedent. There is no rule. The precedent said the group which got highest 4s and 6, they are the winners. Now, this is something very startling, and the England became declared as a winner because of this new precedent. Now, most important is after the match is over, we go to sleep. But our youth, they won't go to sleep. They were Googling to find out was there a precedent or not. This is very important because now they want to know whether there is a precedent or not. Maybe their inquisitiveness or curiosity. But in a very worthless game, one foul match somebody is playing, you would like to know what is the rule of game. Now in this country like this, with 140 crore people governed by a written constitution, anytime when it is being tinkered, have you ever looked into the rule book? That is why Kerala government now states start with the school. Let people know under which constitution we have been governed, whether the rules are being fair or not. When 370 was withdrawn without a constitutional amendment, and Jammu and Kashmir became two separate union territories. Now, what is the excuse given? Now we can withdraw by a resolution. There's no need for a constitutional amendment. Should you not amend the constitution by the letter and spirit of the constitution? No. By a resolution, we can withdraw. Now we have got two territories, and today we are standing in silence. What was promised to this country was by this method, we will contain terrorism. On the other hand, the innocent tourists have been killed, and we are standing in silence. What is that makes us to keep quiet? Never ask them, where is the rule book? Why you remove the special status for Jammu and Kashmir? Are you talking about equality? If you see Schedule 6, some of the tribal areas are given autonomous. Your laws doesn't apply to them. Your CRPC, your CPC doesn't apply to those areas. They are governed by special rules because we are willing to protect their own practice. their own habits. We don't want to disturb them. Now, a country with diversity, you also provide a special measures. It is not violative of equality. On the other hand, it enhances equality. Now, equality does not mean arithmetical equality. Unequal people can never be treated as equal. Equal people can be treated as equal. Now, equal people can be treated. Unequal is be treated equal. That's not equality also. It is in that sense that today, when we remember Dr. Ambedkar, we'll have to remember the greatest peace that he has come to us. Now, how do we remember? Most of you, I don't know whether you're coming from Tamil Nadu, from outside, you go to any Tamil Nadu town where there is Ambedkar statue. Now it's all put in an iron cage. You go to Madras High Court, there is Ambedkar statue and there is a fiberglass partition. A man who gave us the fundamental right, a man who gave us a judicial forum to enforce his right, a man who taught all the time in his life social justice. We have given him a place of a life sentence of putting him in iron cage. You go anywhere, people will damage, people will throw stones, people will paint saffron painting, people will put chapel garlands, all that you can find. In fact, one Allahabad judge last month, when he went to the room, he found that previous occupant of the room was a Dalit. Therefore, he brought Ganga Jal and purified the room. This happens to a High Court judge, not an ordinary person, not one among the 140 crore people of this country. A High Court judge who takes a pledge under the Constitution, he purifies the room. This has never happened. Jagajeevan Ram was 35 years a minister, one of the top ministers of the even Indira Gandhi government. Now, when he went to a temple, as soon as he came out, it was purified. What is this purification? Nobody understands. Our president comes from a tribe. She was not invited to the Ram temple. Yeah. Forget Ram temple. There is a new parliament. Under the constitution, she is the head of the parliament. And she was not invited to open that place. Not even open the place as a guest of the place. Never. Therefore, we will continue to remember one important issue, that caste can never be overcome. Caste is one thing impregnable. And how do you get over this issue? This is the most important issue that we should think of. And Ambedkar gave us the way. Now, Ambedkar statues are kept in an iron cage. You have given them life sentence for a man who gave us the fundamental right. Now, when you go to Jaipur, in the Rajasthan High Court bench in Jaipur, there's a big statue for Manu. Nobody has seen Manu. In fact, it goes by saying there are several Manus. There are interpolations even within the Manusmriti. And now there are several Manus. How do they find this is the Manu statue? Now, if the Manu sits without any disturbance, there are no fence, there are no. Some 2 years back, two women came from Andhra Pradesh. They went and claimed the statue, put tar paint on the Manu, and the police promptly arrested them and took their statement. The women said, when you don't even recognize us as a human being, why should you sit in a High Court campus? That's a question. When you don't treat me as a human being, where is the equality in this country? You can talk about constitution for hours together, but then 1/5 of the Indian population are not treated as equals. That may be 101 problem. You can see the book. I have listed out some of the discrimination. Some of them are open, some of them are hidden. But either way, discrimination continues. Now, in that position, now, do we need an Ambedkar? This question comes. We need an Ambedkar more than ever now. For the simple reason, if India wants to be a democracy, a Republican democracy, a socialist, secular democracy, then you need the teachings of Ambedkar again and again. Not that the human Ambedkar will come back, but his teaching becomes important. Because there are people who try to lie, there are people who try to mislead. Last week, one Nagpur headquarters gave a startling statement that Ambedkar fought for Hindu unity. Now, let me not go into the correctness of that statement. Now, somebody with all responsibility makes a statement that Ambedkar worked for Hindu unity. In what method? I don't understand. In the same Nagpur you can go to Diksha Bhumi. Now, Diksha Bhumi is a place where in 1956, Ambedkar, with 2.5 lakh people, Mahar people, embraced Buddhism. At that time, somebody said, if you go to another religion, you will lose all the concessions, you will lose all the reservation benefits. He said, we are not here for crumbs. What we need is a human dignity, and therefore we will embrace a religion which teaches equality. For many times, when I read the Constitution as a law student in our classroom in second year in 1975, our teacher used to say, the word fraternity, equality